For the next session then, we're going to go into regulations. And with that, I would like to introduce the next speaker, which is Dr. Nina-Luisa Siedler, which is the head of the International Blockchain Competence Group. Welcome, Nina.
Thank you. Yeah, regulation, not an easy topic, not the most popular one in the blockchain space. I am not only a partner at DWF, an international law firm, and concentrating on blockchain with my team in Berlin, but also one of the founding members of the German Blockchain Association. And within that association, I'm the speaker of the finance group, where we are a group of lawyers from all sorts of law firms working together to creating more clarity on the regulation side. And we issued what we call the token regulation paper in February this year, focusing for that piece of work on EU and German law. And currently we're working with a larger international group of lawyers to extend that to further jurisdictions and add country pages for further EU jurisdictions. And what I'm going to say now is basically what we wrote in more length in that paper. So we actually distinguish in the regulatory field the questions concerning token issuances, so the original primary issuance of tokens, and the questions surrounding the trade of tokens following that issuance, and then everything that has to do with service surrounding tokens. So for example, if you want to build a service that eases access to ICOs, then you would play in that field. And different regulations apply for those three areas. And for all three areas, the most important question always is the token a security, or is it another financial instrument? Because those are the topics that are regulated by the financial regulatory rules. Yeah, kinds of tokens, most important question. How to categorize tokens and how to squeeze them into the existing legal framework. Most importantly, security tokens. There are a lot of definitions in the laws what a security is, and they all apply only in their context. But I guess the most important one applying here is the one you find in the MiFID II regulation, which is the basis for the prospectus regime in the EU. So anything that is security according to MiFID II will be part of the prospectus regulation also within the EU. So what is the security token according to MiFID? It's basically everything that is negotiable on a capital market. That is very broad, and unfortunately it's not really helpful because there is, for example, no definition for what a capital market is. So we suggested to work alongside the examples that are given within the MiFID securities definition, which all lists either equity or debt market instruments. So we're saying if you take that as a limiting factor to the definition, then you end up with security tokens being everything that is comparable to the known classical equity or debt instruments out there. So typically repayment obligation, loans, bonds, profit participations, and any kind of shareholder-like or partner-like positions. That gives a little bit of a guidance how this MiFID II securities definition could be applied. And it seems that, at least in Germany, the regulator is working alongside that idea by now. So we're getting feedback on the cases where we insert inquiries to the German regulator that confirm that view. Then on the other side, we have currency tokens, something like Bitcoin, Ether, coins that are meant to be used for payment. And those actually play, again, a different role. They are not financial instruments under the EU regulation. Unfortunately, they are under German rules. That's one thing that we criticize a lot, because the non-alignment of the local law and the EU law doesn't really help. For example, as an exchange to be run in Germany that lists cryptocurrency tokens, you will need to have an MTF license. You don't need that in other countries of the EU. So the problem currently is, and we're discussing this in length, with the Gibraltar blockchain exchange, for example, which is only an exchange for utility tokens. And those might be catched under certain circumstances in the currency token class, that German issuers of such tokens cannot list their tokens on the Gibraltar blockchain exchange. And on the other hand, the Gibraltar blockchain exchange cannot even apply for a license in Germany because they don't have the seat there. So, you know, this distinction between the local law not being equally applied to the same terms as the European law causes tons of frictions. Then the third category is the utility token, which we define, and I know utility token, that term is used in many ways, but in our view, that is a token that represents a right for a service or a product. And that token is playing in the, basically in the e-commerce world, which is also regulated, right? So it's not an unregulated area, and actually the potential liability for not having informed properly about the service or product that you're selling might be even wider than in the financial space. Because there is even less certainty what you actually have to inform about. So I'm always warning, you know, don't take this lightly. But in the end, we have several cases by now that are confirmed by the German regulators to be in that area and do not require any prospectus or license. And that's what we call, in this case, the utility token. Prospectus requirements, I already mentioned it. Maybe just to make clear, there is more than the EU prospectus regime. There are, in addition to that, local law prospectus regimes. And so if you're ticking the box for the EU prospectus regime, saying you're out of that, you still have to look if there might be a local law applying to you in addition. For example, profit participations are very popular in the token scene. It seems that we might get to the agreement that profit participations will fall under the MiFID II definition of securities, hence a prospectus would be required under the EU prospectus. That one says if the minimum investment amount is 100k euro, then you don't need to issue a prospectus, right? So you say, yay, I'm doing that. But then unfortunately, profit participations are also in Germany captured by what we call Vermögensanlagegesetz, another one asking for a prospectus, and that states a minimum amount of 200k for not having to release a prospectus. So be careful, this is all not really aligned yet, and we're lobbying a lot for actually getting that EU-wide more aligned. So this is not working, yeah. Okay, some license requirements, maybe just to mention, if you're taking up a loan, then that might already be banking business. In Germany, for example, only subordinated loans are out of that area. So if you don't put a subordination clause in, you would need a banking license. E-money laws are very relevant in this space. The most of the stable token projects play in that area because e-money is everything that grants you the right to receive fiat back, and that's actually the aim of most of the stable coins out there. And the e-money license is very difficult to get because, at least in Germany, and there are huge differences across the EU, the German regulator says this is the license to do deposit business, to take up funds from third parties and the obligation to return them. And that's why they say, you know, you must meet highest standards. So unfortunately, most of the projects that approach us end up in locations like the UK or Malta, because the regulator over there is way more easy with those topics. And when you got the license over there, you can passport them into other EU countries. Alternative Investment Fund Manager Directive is a lot of times completely overlooked. For example, the DAO back in 2016, I think, played in that area. It states that the managers running those funds need a license. Obviously, for decentralized organizations like the DAO, it's a little bit difficult to tell who is actually the manager. But I'm pretty much sure that you will always find somebody to get on the hook. For example, in that example, I guess it would have been the curators of the DAO. Yeah, and then there are further license requirements. Regulators start to take action. We get some first guidance, unfortunately, in Germany, not on an abstract general basis, but only on a case-by-case basis. And then we're always claiming, please publish your decisions. You may gladly anonymize the case behind it, but you know, let us learn alongside from yourself. But BaFin is currently still very reluctant to make its case-by-case decisions public. Yeah, we're seeing the amendment of the fourth anti-money laundering directive that will kick in maybe end of the year. I'm not sure what the current status is, but it will come, that is clear. And I think the wording is agreed, which will introduce KYC obligations to exchanges, cryptocurrency exchanges, and wallet providers. That will certainly come. We currently advise our clients to do KYC in case of a token sale in any event, because otherwise you run into the practical problem that you don't get a bank account. We solved this just, you know, during the past weeks. In Germany, we have now a number of smaller banks providing bank accounts to ICO companies if they do proper KYC when they do their token sale. And there are service providers building up that are offering that service on a banking level. Yeah, little comparison to the US. The Howey test, much discussed. I think it's in the public discussion, it takes way too much room because they actually sort the categories of tokens completely different to what we do in the EU. The Howey test basically has two criteria that are different from what we do here, and that is the expectation of profits from the investment, and any profits come from the efforts of a promoter or a third party. And that basically means that when you create a token that cannot be used right away, but only in the future, post-functional token, then this token will be a security no matter what its content is. I always like to cite the example of the golf club selling its membership prior to the loan being laid. That's a security. While in Europe, it would remain the sale of a membership. And Switzerland, unfortunately, went over to more or less adopt that idea by giving a public announcement, I think also in February, March this year. And I understand from my Swiss colleagues that this was without any need, right? So they principally have the same basics as we have in the EU, but nevertheless the regulator decided to move towards the US view of things. Yeah, multi-jurisdictional challenge, just very quickly. You don't have only to deal with your local regulator where the project is located, but obviously you have to take into account any kind of laws where you want to market and sell your token. So it doesn't really help moving to some jurisdictions where regulation is taken easier if you don't only want to sell there. If you want to sell across borders, you also have to watch out for the regulation in those countries where you want to sell. Maybe some general recommendations for token sales. The white paper is a legally relevant document, full stop. I always hear, this is just some information on the way, and legally relevant is only the token sale agreement, which excludes always every kind of liability. That's not true, right? Under the e-commerce rules, you must give proper information which is not misleading, and in order to check what information you gave, everyone will look into the white paper. Then, draft your terms and conditions, maybe not only for the agreement for the direct sale, but also for the later use of the token. And then again, do not copy and paste white papers. Regulators know the common white papers out there, right? They are in the Telegram channels, they are everywhere. They don't like repeatedly reading things they have read somewhere else before, because that's obviously a sign that this might not be the true information about this project. We always say communicate openly with your regulators. In most of the countries, there are already groups within the regulators who really understood the whole game. So you're speaking on the same level there. Yeah, KYC, I already mentioned. Pre-sale, there is no exemption for pre-sales, no matter what, right? So the same rules apply. And e-commerce rules often overlook. That's really something to consider also when you build your token sale in the internet. There's a certain way how that must be set up, what information must be given when. Yeah, and understand legal environment in any jurisdiction where you want to sell the token. That are the recommendations from my side.